Driver, now joining us on
He's out in Mayaro or somewhere. What bridge is that Ruhan bill you're on there, Dr. Driver?
No, that's actually it's in Caroni Swamp, and that's the background for our conference, which we have upcoming, the Caribbean Sustainable Energy Conference on June the 2nd. So I'll get my advert in early.
All right, great. Because a friend invited me to go to the Caroni Swamp the other day to do the boat ride. I've never done it. To check these cars. I've never done it.
Oh, and really? You have to do that. Wow, I can't believe you've never done that. It's a fantastic.
No, I've never. Seriously.
Wow. I've never done it either. So, I mean, we're two of us. Yes,
you know, go together.
You know, interestingly, Dr. Driver, so many Trinidadians and Guyanians have never done that. We know of it, but we just never did it, you know. And
it's a wonderful thing. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. I mean, it's something which everyone should do.
We'll try. Right. We'll definitely have to do it. Now that you've given us such a vivid picture of it.
Okay.
So, of course, Dr. Driver, thanks for joining us on the breakfast show this morning. And, of course, we're talking energy. And of course, we just spoke with Dr. Krishna Prasad on his perspective of the energy sector. And I know you would have heard some of the conversation while you were waiting backstage. But what's your take in terms of, if we could start off with the Grenada issue, the nutmeg issue, and maybe we should start off with our poll this morning, because we asked our listeners and viewers, do you think that the Dragon gas deal is dead? And the vast majority of our listeners and viewers said, yes, they think it is. Right. And well, certainly Dr. Prasad says, well, in his opinion, it is because of the Trump administration. Maybe after the Trump administration changes, then maybe you may get some life back into it. But at this point, it looks dead in the water. What's your take?
Well, I think the first thing I think people talk about dragon as if it is actually a dragon. It's a accumulation of natural gas under the sea in Venezuela's territorial waters. Obviously, that gas has not gone away. The resources are still there, and there's also a license which exists, that license to produce that natural gas with the government of Venezuela is held by Shell and the National Gas Company. So that's still there and exists. The challenge is that there's the sanctions regime, which the U.S. government has placed on Venezuela. We had a license which had allowed us to deal with Venezuela despite the sanctions regime, and that license from the U.S. government to allow us to deal despite the sanctions has now been removed. And I don't really want to comment on whether that's going to change in the future or not. It's a geopolitical issue involving U.S. government and Venezuelan government, and things might change or it may not. I think we just have to wait and see for that. But the field is still there. The resources are there. So hopefully at some stage, we will sort out the politics of it, and that is one of many sources of natural gas which could be brought into the Trinidad system.
So your short answer is no. Then it's not dead.
Well, the field is clearly it's not. This is a natural gas field, so the field doesn't die. The project at the moment has got a very serious political challenge, which has to be overcome before anything could happen.
Oh. Yeah, in terms of Grenada, the Grenada nutmeg field, and of course the former Prime Minister and Minister of Energy referenced caution with regard to that particular field. Dr. Prasad indicated that he didn't want to put on any political hat. He was just speaking from a technical point of view, and his perspective he referenced was purely technical and geological, in that there was potential there. Do you agree with that perspective?
Yeah, there was an exploration well drilled in the Nutmeg well in 2017, and there was a find of hydrocarbons from that. Very limited detail is in the public domain since then. The field was licensed to a company called Global Petroleum Group. It's a small Russian privately held company. They held the license. We've had very limited information about that since that find. When the well was being drilled, the exploration well was being drilled, that was actually serviced out of Trinidad. So a lot of Trinidadian service companies or Trinidadian-based service companies worked on that project. But since then, we've had very little information. I think that it is an opportunity and something certainly would be great to explore. And if there's some new information available to the government now, which makes that something which is very worth exploring quickly, certainly something we should be pursuing. I think it's a great opportunity. I think Grenada, if it's a major a gas field, and needs infrastructure to develop it, Grenada isn't going to want to put methanol and ammonia plants in Grenada, and obviously there's a very quick route to market for them to bring that gas into Trinidad, into probably the same Hibiscus platform that Dragon would come into, and into the Trinidad network. So that's obviously would allow a project like that to move faster than if the market of gas wasn't available. But it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a while, and we just have to wait to hear more details from the Grenada side, about what the license conditions are, who is going to develop it, and all of that information, and what the reserves are like. We have no indication of that yet.
And those were, Dr. Driver, those were two of our concerns this morning. The fact that we haven't been hearing about this particular field, and also the fact that it may require, although Dr. Prasad said no, that it may require going through the Venezuelan waters. And you mentioned just now...
No, it wouldn't require going through the Venezuelan waters. I don't know quite where that came from. The Grenada, there's a maritime boundary between Grenada and Trinidad, and it wouldn't need to go through Venezuela.
That's debunked. Right.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, I think that's just a factual statement. You would not have to put a pipeline through Venezuelan waters to bring that natural gas from there to the Trinidad network.
Okay. So but you did mention just now that it will have to connect to the same pipeline that's bringing the gas from Dragon. Is that what you said just now too?
It bring to the same platform in Trinidad waters as the Dragon field would have brought into that same platform, the Hibiscus platform off Trinidad's north coast.
Right. That is what was not clear. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah.
In terms of the natural gas supplementation that's coming on in the next couple of years, I don't know how much is coming on in 2026 and 2027, but I know there is some sort of gas coming into the country at that point.
Yes.
How much relief is that going to give us?
Well, okay, between now and 2027, there are fields coming into production. There's the SIP field, which is coming on at the moment, the Mento field, which is going to be coming in later this year. You have the Coconut project, Ginger projects. There are projects which are bringing natural gas in. There's reworking existing fields. So there is potential for new gas to come. But remember, you're always fighting against the natural decline of the existing gas fields. The analogy I always use is that we're trying to run up a down escalator. So that's why having to move quickly is so important, because if you stop and you stand still, you go further back down, and you've got to run even faster to catch back up again. So with the fields which we've got coming on over the next 2 years, those are basically what will help us hopefully stay more or less in place and not go too much further down. Then there is the big field, the Manatee field, which comes on in 2027. That is going to take us a bit further up the escalator. Not back to where we were in 2010, not back to 4 BCF a day, but take us a little bit further up. So that the Manatee field is the big one, which is going to come into production in 2027. That will make a sort of a material difference. But we need a constant stream of those sort of projects coming in. The big opportunity one is the Calypso project, which is in the deep waters between Tobago and Barbados. Major project, and that could really turn around the production profile in the country. Very expensive to develop, very technically challenging. It can be done, but it's a technically challenging field. There's been no investment decision yet taken for that field. That's the one which is currently licensed to Woodside, the Australian operator, who were operating the Angostura development, which they've recently in the process of selling on to Perenco, the company who've been working in teak salmon and pui, very experienced company at dealing with old resources. So Woodside have sold that on to Perenco. But then there's this deep water field between Tobago and Barbados that has could make a material difference. It'd be good to put some focus there to bring that into have an investment decision taken there. So
I know that the issue of the gas and the fall in gas production affects dramatically our downstream industries,
of course,
like ammonia, methanol, urea, and of course, I think Proman would be big in methanol,
yes,
in terms of the methanol production, and of course, it's all connected to the decarbonization efforts, well, across the planet, because of climate change, etc. And I know Proman is big on, I believe they are big on that being an alternative fuel for aviation and bunkering and stuff like that. How much are these companies worried? I don't know if you have a sense of it, because I assume they are part of the energy chamber. How worried are they about the gas situation in Trinidad and Tobago, or are they confident that we will navigate it?
Well, I think so. Those are not two either or situations. You can be nervous about a thing and still confident you can get your way through it. So that thing is, I think, is how I paint it. Obviously, it's a big challenge for everybody. The gas supply situation. Petrochemical plants we have some which have been taken offline, and so that's an asset which is not then producing. So it's not producing for the company or for the producing revenue for the country. Obviously, Train 1 at Atlantic is offline now. And then even the plants who are in production are operating below capacity, which obviously impacts their profitability, which means then less tax for the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And also the ability to plan long term. These investments in decarbonisation, these are not investments where the return is within 2 years, which is what the current sort of gas supply contracts are because of the challenges we have with the gas supply. So the downstream plants are very, very aware, very conscious, very concerned about the upstream gas supply situation. I think that there's a lot of work which has been gone on over the last few years within the industry, with the chamber playing a major role in that to ensure that there's good dialogue between all the players in that value chain, because the downstream companies need the upstream companies to supply them with gas. But if the downstream companies all close down, the upstream producers of gas have no market to sell to, so they also can't continue. So it's a process where all the players in that value chain need each other, and they are, therefore there's a collective objective to ensure we have a resilient sector, and that comes through collaboration. So the energy chamber is all about collaboration to build that resilience.
Yeah, Dr. Driver, we just needed to break for a quick news update, and then I wanted to come back. We wanted to come back to continue the conversation, taking it, of course, to Guyana and Suriname, and whether Trinidad can position itself as a regional hub and logistics hub for the whole issue of oil and gas in this part of the world.
Sure, so we can love to have that conversation.
All right, so we'll have that conversation when we come back. Of course, it's just 8 a.m. on the dot, and we have to break for our 8 a.m. news update.
Thank you for staying with us, Dr. Driver.
Thanks so much for staying with us. And so, Dr. Driver, to continue the conversation, the issue of Trinidad and Tobago being a logistics hub and energy hub for what is taking place, well, potentially in Grenada, and of course, certainly in Guyana and Suriname. What's the possibility of that happening?
Well, I mean, essentially, that has been the case, for many years, that we have been an important hub for activity obviously when Grenada, when the wells were being drilled back in 2017, 2018, Suriname, continued to support exploration activity there. In Guyana, in the early days, a lot was done out of Trinidad for Guyana. But then obviously, as Guyana developed this massive resource that they built a lot more capacity in country. So, quite logically, more is done in Guyana than it had been during the exploration phase. But there's still a lot of work which is staged out of Trinidad for work in Guyana, Suriname, and hopefully in the future in Grenada. That is, I think, one of the key things that Trinidad needs to be positioning itself to do is that logistical hub. we have a great natural harbor in the Gulf of Paria. So you do see vessels coming into Trinidad to be serviced, to then go and work in Guyana and Suriname and elsewhere. And I think that is a huge business opportunity for the country to develop ourselves really as that maritime hub. There are things we need to be doing to really grab hold of that opportunity. And it's the ease of doing business things, which we often talk about. So the ease of equipment coming in and out of the country, the ability of skilled people to move, between Trinidad, Guyana, Suriname, Grenada, Barbados, and across CARICOM. Those are all things we should be working on. In fact, and are working on very actively in the chamber. We have a big emphasis particularly on the people side. And the ability of people to move, and we need to have the skills systems in place where skilled workers can move between those countries.
So, Dr. Driver, so where did this talk come from of the same gas coming through? I think also from Guyana and Suriname, passing through the same Venezuelan waters. Where did that come from? Because Dr. Prasad had said that's not so. It doesn't have to.
Okay. So I think I mentioned earlier about Grenada. So there's an interesting Grenada that would not have to come through Venezuelan waters. From Guyana or Suriname, I mean, it depends on the route you put the pipeline. I think that the pipeline would probably have to run through Venezuelan waters. I think technically, probably possibly you can do it, not through Venezuelan waters. I think that might make it a lot more expensive. I don't know the details of that. That's an engineering issue which has to be resolved, and I think we're a long way from making any decisions around that. There is obviously a massive resource available in Guyana and in Suriname, a gas resource, which is being proved up, and Guyana has very active plans to develop that gas industry. And they're looking at various options, and I think Trinidad is one of the options that they're looking at. And those are not things where it's one or the other. Those are things where you could, because of the size of the resource that they have in Guyana, it could be all of the above. Doesn't have to be one. One of those the options, and those options are develop LNG facility in Guyana, develop the petrochemical sector in Guyana. Export natural gas to change it into electricity and put that into the Brazilian network, or bring natural gas by pipeline to Trinidad. Those are all options. They all have their challenges, and they all have their pros. And what we need is deep conversation with the government of Guyana, and also the operating companies in Guyana, in Exxon, in particular, who are the license holders for that field. Fields, a huge, massive block, and there's a lot of natural gas available. There's also a lot of natural gas available in Suriname. Really, what the situation is that the fields which are being found closer to Suriname, on the Guyana side, but closer to the Suriname border, tend to have more natural gas, and the fields in Suriname have more natural gas. So it's a combination of oil and natural gas. So those companies will want to develop those natural gas resources as well. And there's no existing market for natural gas, or no large market for natural gas in Guyana or Suriname. So you either have to develop that market like we did in Trinidad, but that takes a long time, or you have to find an export market. That can be through LNG, but if it goes into LNG or go into international markets, or it could be via pipeline, and that obviously the nearest market where there's a significant demand for natural gas to Guyana and Suriname is Trinidad.
Why is it that conversation, because we talk about negotiations, we know that, for example, our two CARICOM partners, Guyana and Suriname, definitely have the gas. Why isn't that mobilized more in terms of obviously making Trinidad and Tobago the point at which those negotiations and the monetization of the infrastructure towards Trinidad? Why is that still, as lay people not in the energy sector, it seems as if it's still to be discussed, and it's still not certain
embryonic
that Suriname and Ghana will when they should, because we are CARICOM partners.
Well, okay. So I think you need to just dial that back a little bit, because there have been a lot of conversations that have taken place, with with the governments in both countries. I mean, particularly in the case of Suriname, there has been a working group. We have been part of one of the working groups on skills transfer. There's a very, very close relationship with the state oil company in Suriname and the energy chamber in Trinidad. They are actually members of our chamber, and we've had numerous backwards and forwards visits between Suriname and Trinidad with Staatsolie, and there've been numerous backwards and forwards visits with Guyana. There's a lot of Trinidadian companies working in Guyana, and there's a very close relationship within the private sector between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. So those are all things which are active. But then, why has this not moved faster? These are huge, massive, multi-billion-dollar projects where we are dealing with international companies who have their own priorities. Trinidad is just one option out of many options. The companies like Total in Suriname and Exxon in Guyana will have their own priorities and their own views of what they want to do. So these are things which don't happen overnight. They are looking at all of the various options to maximize their return to those resources. And I also just want to put on the table, there's no obligation that exists on Guyana or Suriname to supply gas to Trinidad.
Yeah,
that's
not. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. There is none. Mm-hmm. But as CARICOM partners, there should be. But I get it.
I don't say that. Trinidad didn't feel that we didn't have an obligation to supply natural gas when we had an excess of it to other countries. We looked at it as a commercial venture.
Yeah.
The government of Guyana's and the government of Suriname, what they need to be doing is using those resources best possible for the citizens of Guyana and the citizens of Suriname. Now, if we can get a situation in which there is alignment where it's good for them and it's good for us, well, then that's the win-win, which we need to be exploring.
Yeah. I get that. And I know we're close to closing of the interview because you're right on 8:15. I just wanted to touch, maybe you can give us like a minute in talking about renewable energy, because that's obviously going to be part of the landscape in Trinidad and Tobago moving forward.
Yes.
I know KBR had done a report a couple of years ago and suggested our best approach was offshore wind and solar, rather than green hydrogen, which I think was talked about at some point. There was a green hydrogen talk with regard to the Trinidad and Tobago landscape.
So let me just explain that a little bit, because the studies which have been done is exactly about green hydrogen, but you need the renewable energy to produce the green hydrogen. Right. So you need the wind power or solar, to produce green electrons, which you then use to split water, the hydrogen from water, which you then put into your ammonia production. So that is what Trinidad offers, is a massive market for green hydrogen. And that means that you can then bring renewable energy in to supply green hydrogen to that ammonia industry, which then gives you the international market for ammonia. So the renewables and the petrochemical sector, renewables and natural gas in Trinidad, these are all linked things. They're not two different things. We have to look at this as one energy ecosystem. So if we bring in renewable energy to produce electricity for consumers in Trinidad, that means we're using less natural gas to produce electricity, and therefore that means more natural gas available for the companies in Point Lisas, and more exports, more US dollars to be earned. So we shouldn't think of these things as separate and apart, or even in opposition to each other. In fact, these are things which we need to be all doing all of these things together. One big message I have: we've got to always think so it's renewables and gas. everything. It's it's Grenada and Guyana. It's not or. We need to stop thinking about it's either one or the other. It's all of those things. It's domestic gas and imported gas. So
I get you.
My big message is,
I mean, final question, Dr. Driver. Are you optimistic about the energy future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very optimistic about Trinidad and Tobago's energy future. We have a strong world-class energy sector. It has challenges. We've been through some challenging periods. The last 10 years since the downturn in prices in 2015 have been challenging for a lot of countries in the global energy industry. It's been challenging in Trinidad. But I see a very clear pathway through that. We've just got to keep focused on bringing natural gas resources into production. Focus on our domestic resources, which we have there. We just need to move fast. So the message there is about doing things really quickly. We've got to move at pace. We've got to remove the bottlenecks which exist in the current approvals processes. We have got to just make decisions quickly. Look at the opportunities to import natural gas as well from any of our neighboring countries, all of them. As I say, it's not an or, it's an and then look at the decarbonization, bring in renewable energy, bigger focus on energy efficiency. So those are all things we need to be doing. But I'm very confident about the future because we have the people. Trinidad has a really well-developed, skilled, knowledgeable energy industry based upon Trinidad and Tobago citizens who know the sector well, and we can find our way through any of the issues that we're facing.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Drivers, for speaking with us this morning. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
My pleasure.
Of course, we'll be we're going to come back to you at some point again,
sure.
Because energies are always going to be an ongoing conversation with Trinidad and Tobago landscape. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Dr. Driver. Take care.
Bye.
We'll see you on Caroni Swamp one day. Don't worry.
Well, it's hope you see it at our conference, 2nd of June. It's our Sustainable Energy Conference. It's our we'll have two big events for the year. One is sort of Trinidad and Tobago, oil, gas, petrochemical focused, and then we have this Caribbean Sustainable Energy Conference where we're looking at the wider region and everything which is happening, putting Trinidad in that context. About this energy transition and sustainable energy. So 2nd of June, hope to perhaps we can get some reporting out of that as well.
All right. Well, Richard will reach out to you after this program and tell you how best to get it on this show.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. Take care. All right, Dr. Driver. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Driver.